I literally went into the grocery to buy a loaf of bread with change in my pocket and just sat there for the entire day. I made a play at 70 acres with my cousin, sold to the largest developer in the country. My commission was around 3 million on that. You can make really great money by just looking at the numbers and understanding demographics and timing the market. Pretend you're writing a book. What is that book of your life going to look like?
All right. Welcome to another episode of the Agent to Investor podcast, where we talk about the agent side of real estate investing. We'll be talking about the successes, the failures, and all in between. My name is Nico Garcia, local real estate investor and agent based out of Montgomery County, Maryland. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host,
like Northern Virginia realtor and mostly out-of-state investor.
And today we have another wonderful guest. We have Mr. James Aduna. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks you guys.
I had the pleasure of meeting James a couple of weeks ago in our Greece mastermind. Learned a ton from everybody there. Really felt the connection to James, and he has a wonderful story. So wanted to bring him on and talk about his journey, not only in real estate, but also in life. Yeah, why don't we start from the beginning, James? Where are you located? What do you do for work? And then what initially got you interested in real estate?
Yeah, where I live right now is Los Angeles, California. As far as what got me into real estate, it was really, I read this book, Managing Oneself by Peter Drucker. And that was about, I would say about close to 15, 20 years ago. And I knew in my career, I've been in medical sales for close to 15 years now, that at some point, I need to really think of retirement. And what it said in the book is really, before you do that, you should be 15 to 20 years approximately ahead of that. And I started thinking about what can I do? What do I enjoy for my retirement that I can do for the rest of my life? And really real estate was the thing that I really couldn't get out of my head, and always try to break down numbers, always loved looking at deals. Similar to you guys, I worked in a small brokerage up in San Francisco just to learn that for a couple of years on the side. So here I am. I'm a full-time investor, but I also work full-time too, in the biotech industry and biotech sales.
So I know when we spoke, you got to pretty cool deals, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But what did the initial journey of your investment start? I know you read a book and you were always interested. What did it look like in the beginning?
Yeah, it was actually like a lot of investors. It was terrible in the beginning for me, actually. I got into investing, purchasing a property from a friend of mine. It was a condo in the Berkeley Hills of California. So it was Northern California. And at that time, I thought it would be a great investment. I knew the area well. So I put my money in down and I purchased that. I had a renter in there for about a year, great couple. Things were going well. I made a play at 70 acres with my cousin, and it was 70 acres unentitled land. It was mostly agriculture. We re-entitled it to commercial and industrial. With about 6 months, I had that sold to the largest industrial developer in the country. My commission dollars was probably around 3 million on that. The biggest mistake though I made was I sat there and negotiated. We bought the land for $1.50 per square foot. We went to sell it for $5.50, and they renegotiated to try to sell it or to try to buy it from us for $4.50. I wouldn't budge on that, and neither would my partners. At that time, that's kind of when the real estate industry fell. Shortly after there, we were stuck holding the land. I put all my savings into that and had no reserves whatsoever. So as you can imagine, with no reserves, you had your savings in there. And then on top of that, what really led to the demise at that time was I got let go of my high-tech sales position because the .com was suffering as well. So literally I lost everything in a couple months. And yeah, I remember at a time that during that same time, this is good for your investors and your people that tune into your show to know it's not always, roses when you're investing. I literally went into the grocery to buy a loaf of bread with change in my pocket. That's all I had. And the lady at the checkout counter said, "Sorry, sir, you don't have enough. It's $1.15." I had 90 cents. So I left the loaf of bread there, walked upstairs into my apartment overlooking San Francisco Bay, and just sat there for the entire day and just cried. But I didn't sit there, right? The key point is I didn't sit there. I figured out what I needed to do. And all I could do for the next month was go down to the gym because it was free. And while I was working out, I was trying to figure out how I'm going to get out of this situation. Like, I kind of burned the ships because I didn't want to go back home to my parents. I was like, what, 30, in my early 30s at that time. And I did not want to try to redo what I was doing there, because obviously that was an issue. So I worked for my friend's restaurant for a couple months to get some money in my pocket and lived with my girlfriend at that time, and for free. And I told her, like, listen, I'm going to pay you back and then some. Within probably a month of living with her, I found a medical sales job, and I never looked back after that. But really, the moral of the story here, you guys, is to have reserves. So today, in all my investments, I have at least 6 months or more in reserves.
Thank you for sharing that story, because, not every story, not every origin is going to be the same. It's not all sunshine and roses in the beginning. And, it sounded like you hit rock bottom and made you kind of reassess what was important, and you didn't give up, right? You didn't put your head in your hand and quit. You used it as motivation to figure out your next move, right, James?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. The key thing is never to give up, right? If you're doing the right thing, you're not hurting anyone, you're helping others, you're giving value, just don't give up, because all you need to do is iterate until you find the right concept or the right person, right mentor, etc.
So that first deal, James, it sounded like, I mean, that's a big project. You had a lot of land. Did you know anything about that? Did your partner kind of know, or how did that look? You just thought it was a good
Yeah.
deal and you just jumped full force?
Yeah, no, good question, Nico. I didn't know anything about land. I knew how to sell, right? So for me, it's like you give me really some fine points to how to sell and market a property. I literally scoured all the commercial developers, all in Southern California, Northern California, and set meetings with those guys. And I had meetings literally, I would say pretty much every week for 6 months before I sold it. And it was just kind of like that. To be confident, you just need to know certain things about the asset. Then my cousin's been in the land development arena for about that time, probably about 10 years. So he was pretty well versed in the property itself. He just needed someone to set up for meetings, and we were a good team together.
Got it. Okay. So it sounded like that kind of jump started your next career with, in the medical field and in medical sales. How has that helped you in your future business mindset of being in that medical sales field?
Yeah, no, it's helped me a lot, Nico. It's within all the companies. I've only worked with 3 companies in medical sales. Now I have my own distributorship. But during that whole journey, I looked at myself as an entrepreneur, because sales, just like, what you're doing with real estate, you make what you kill, right? So I knew that I can work as hard as I can, or I can take time off. If you're hitting your number in most sales roles, you're not going to be really looked at and micromanaged. Luckily for me, I've always been good at sales and marketing. So I really was able to just be my own entrepreneur. And what I found out was, I was like what I was telling you, Nana, earlier, I didn't want to be that guy just to make good money and just blow it away, right? And on things and events. That's all well and good. You should celebrate your wins, but I've always put a minimum 10% away, a larger commission checks. I put even more away, just so I can start investing in other things. Now, mind you, during that time, it was a forced savings, because I lost those properties. I had really bad credit for 7 years. So what I ended up doing is just saving all that money, because I knew at one point I'll have better credit, and then I can reinvest again.
James, you mentioned you were always good in sales, right? So how did that come about? Is there a book that you read, or did you always just feel comfortable talking to people? Because everything is sales, right, James?
Right. Right. Yeah. Everything is sales. Nico hit the nail right in the head. Regardless of what you do, if you're a professor, you need to talk to your students. If you're a person on the phone, you still need to talk to your customers. If you're trying to meet the love of your life, you still got to sell yourself, right? So at the end of the day, for me, I just enjoy people. I'm a curious guy. I think that's half the battle of sales, is just really trying to find something you're interested about the individual, and then hanging your hat on that and moving the conversation along.
Yeah. And having active listening, right? A lot of conversations. I'm sure we all dealt with people that say they're good conversationalists, but they tend to dominate the conversation, and you're there, you can't get a word in. And I think a good conversation and anybody who's good in sales is actually, you have 2 ears, one mouth for a reason, and you're listening and trying to understand what value you could provide to the other individual, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'll let Anna hop in here and ask a question.
I'm like, wait, so did you end up
Yeah.
selling the land? Because I think I missed that part of the story. So yes, no.
Now we ended up
Yeah.
losing the land there, Anna. Yeah, and that was my life savings. And I ended up losing the condo as well, and then lost my job in the same time. Yeah, yeah, he's a great guy as well. Very genuine heart, and yeah, well versed in his side of real estate too.
Oh, the fact that all of this happened to you, I know lots of people that went through the crash and they gave up. They just decided real estate wasn't for them. And like you said, what I did hear was you didn't give up. Like you didn't just sit and wallow. You sat with it and you accepted it, and then you moved on. And I mean, have we gotten to the point where we're asking, like, what does your portfolio look like now? Like, what was your first investment property that actually didn't end up like the first piece of land after that?
Yeah. So down the road, I had, a good amount of time, right? 7 years of bad credit to figure out what I wanted to do. And I was doing more research on single family homes, I was just every day and proficiently watching Bigger Pockets in the beginning days, right? When Brandon and David Green were just starting out, and I was listening, and it was just a podcast at that time. That was just kind of one of the podcasts I'd been listening to, not to what it is today. And I was just listening to it every day. I was just so addicted to it, because here's like a tool that you can make really great money by just looking at the numbers and understanding demographics, right? And timing the market. And people think that's really hard. It's really not, if you're disciplined and align yourself with the right people in the area. And that's what I actually did. So my first 3-4 investments were single family homes in the Memphis area. I met an agent out there. We connected. We had a great, rapport with one another. He got me my first 3 to 4 turnkey properties there. His name is Clifton Stone, great guy. We're still really great friends now. And then another guy, Steven Akindona, who taught me how to BRRRR. And after those first couple of properties, I started BRRRRing properties, and the rest of my portfolio in Memphis became all BRRRRs, right? So I was able to just take the money, reinvest it, take the money, reinvest it, and the rest is history. I have about a little bit over 90 pads and units in my portfolio, stretching from single family homes, multifamily, as well as mobile home parks. And that's where I'm looking towards. And then in the future, we're going to add on medical dental buildings into the portfolio, just because I'm in the industry and I just want to go full circle and actually provide doctors, dentists, a building that I manage, a place to work and service their patients. So that's kind of one of my dreams that I want to do. And I'm looking for that as well. But primary business now is for real estate is mobile home parks.
So I love that story, James, because you talk about your hardships in the beginning and, losing properties. And that alone could set people back and never to get into real estate investing again. But you understood the power. You were doing a ton of research, listening to Bigger Pockets, doing all your education. And then when you were ready, you kind of just dove right back in the market. So I kind of want to talk about, you mentioned Memphis and going into that market. And finding your community. How did you end up finding this agent? Was this a referral? And like, how did you decide on that specific market? Because I know, were you in LA at the time?
I was actually in San Francisco about to go to LA. I was recruited by another company to take care of the West Coast for the sales team. And I started looking just before I left. And yeah, I researched and looked at the demographics, and why I chose Memphis really was because at that time they had a population that was increasing, but they had a large blue collar network because of FedEx and UPS, FedEx being the US headquarters there, was the main hub. And the price of real estate at that time was very affordable. I could buy a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom home for less than 100,000. So that went a long way with my income at that time. But in the same time, I didn't know anyone there. So to your point, what I did was find 3 or 4 companies, brokerages that I wanted to work with. And based on the bio, I just called them. And then from there, I connected with this one agent, Clifton, the one I mentioned, and him and I would just had a good rapport with one another. He was just starting out. I was just starting in investing. He had high aspirations. I had high aspirations, and we just kind of worked together. And till this day, we're still good friends. And unfortunately, I don't buy real estate from him anymore, but I give him a lot of referrals because I got very lucky. Him and Steven are the 2 honest realtors out there that really understand what they're doing. And it's more of the customer first versus their wallet first, which you don't find out from a lot of realtors, unfortunately. But these guys are really, really upstanding guys.
I love that you had a great experience with an agent. And I'm just curious, what type of attributes were you looking, especially as an out-of-state investor in agents? Anna and I are real estate agents, and we want to make sure anybody who's listening understands what it's important on the investing side. What are they looking for? What are you looking for in agents, partners?
Really, for me, it's number one, is that person personable, right? Because I don't want to talk to an agent who's kind of flat, who doesn't have any personality, right? At least somewhat engaging. But also, I want to talk to an agent primarily because they're knowledgeable about what they are selling, not just the actual asset, but what does the market look like? What do you think of the market in 5 years from now, right? What was the market in the past, right? And then understanding the numbers, right? I always know when I'm talking to a new agent, when they don't understand the numbers, right? They should know more about that asset in numbers wise than I do. Now, if I know more about that in 5-10 minutes, there's a problem. Because really at the end of the day, especially if you're an investor, the 2 things that, for me, what I look at are the numbers and the demographics, right? So it's got to match my criteria, and the numbers speak for itself, right? So when I look at my performance every day, every week, I have a criteria and I know that area and how to invest in that area. Just don't inflate your numbers, because I'll figure it out and then I won't work with you again. Right? So, but really, to answer your question, is really be personable, understand your numbers, and understand your market.
So I'm trying to wrap my head around the story. So when you started looking in Memphis, you said he was new, but he was hungry. What did you mean? Like he was a newer agent, or he was newer to investing?
Yeah, no, he was newer to the brokerage sales on that end for investors. So Clifton, he was new to investor sales, but he understood his numbers and he understood the market. And you can tell he was a good agent because he wanted to put me ahead of his commission. And you could just tell that because his authenticity, right? And when I say he's new, he wasn't like 10 years in the business. He was probably at that time, probably 3 to 5 years in the business, but it's back to those basics. He understood his numbers and understood the area, and we grew together. And now he actually owns his own company, right? In real estate investing, but it's not surprising because he just stuck with the fundamentals.
Yeah, I like that because we've talked about like looking for investor friendly agents and how many agents claim to be investor friendly, but it's just because they worked with an investor before, but they don't actually understand the numbers or what it means. So that's an interesting perspective, like someone that really knows the market, but is willing to learn and grow with you. And that shows that hunger. That's another potential option to have an agent partner for life if you're willing to learn with them. That's where my brain is going with it. This is someone that was newer to our investing, but they were willing to learn, because some agents that have experience say they're investor friendly, but then they don't have time. They're busy working with regular clients and they don't really follow through. So that was an interesting perspective for me. That's a little different than I think we've talked about before.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I would add to that too, as with Clifton, with you also, it was after the sales service.
Mhm.
Like when I had issues with management, because it was a management company too that he was connected with, it was sales and management. He would go bat for me on management issues.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just the sale, it was the after service sale as well, batting, going to bat for me on management issues. And that's what made me like him even more. And until this day, I still refer investors to him.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I've talked to agents and said with being a truly investor savvy agent, it's looking at the long game of how this relationship will not turn into just one transaction, but multiple transactions or referrals. Because most agents are like, I sold a house, great. And then you never hear from them again. Maybe you get an anniversary card 5 years later or whatever. But most agents are just focused on the transaction right in front of them right now and then move on to the next.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So James, you mentioned
Yeah.
that, your first properties were turnkey. They were ready to get rented, which is great. It's a great way to kind of get started and get your feet wet into landlording and things like that. And then you ended up pivoting to do BRRRRs and bigger construction deals and things like that. Did you have any background in anything like construction wise, or what made you decide to go that route?
Yeah, another great question there, Nico. So no, I didn't have any background, but there's a great book I would recommend, is Who Not How. I sat there and I figured out, if I don't have a background, who do I know that has the background? And the nice thing is, during that time, that's when I joined GoBundance. And in our network, pretty much whatever you need in real estate is there. Guys that have made it in whatever you want to do, but they also have different trades that they're knowledgeable in. So the partner that I picked, which, I unbeknownst to me, he had the trades that I needed and had the knowledge of project management, construction in that regard. So it gave me the gumption to move forward with larger projects. Up until that point, I could do myself the single family homes. I understood the scope of work to do that, but I wanted to scale, right? So instead of doing one or two a year, maybe 5 a year, I think I was doing at that point, we jumped up and got a multifamily with 14 units, right? So that multifamily needed some decent work, and I needed his skill set. So I brought Chris along, which was a number of years ago, and he's still my partner today. But I brought the skill set that he didn't have, and I brought the skill set that he needed as well. Because for me, I'm more customer facing. For him, he likes to be the back office, looking at numbers, looking at rehab, scopes of work, things of that nature, dealing with the vendor issues.
Yeah. So it sounded like, the main objective was to scale. I love that, talking to your community and partnering with people, because partnerships in real estate can be a game changer, right, James?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't be here till today, you guys, without partnerships, without a network. It's partnerships in the network. If you want to get to another level in life, just in general, whether it's real estate or just become a better, your husband or wife, mother, anything like that, you just have to get a better network, right? Because the answers are all out there. It's just who's in your network, right? Is whether you scale or you don't scale in life, in real estate, and everything else.
No, I was going to say that takes a certain kind of confidence to recognize where your weaknesses are and then recognize that you got to ask for help elsewhere. So your partner, Chris, was he also in California, or was he over in, is it Memphis? Because I'm curious how you got your boots on the ground team in Memphis to actually do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because Chris, he lives in Northern California. He was investing in Indiana, right? So yeah, he was investing in Indiana, and he's got a great story himself. I mean, he's got, I don't know, probably he's got 30 30 to 40 single family homes there. He
Wow.
bought all in a lot of distressed properties, but he was scaling the same way I was scaling in Memphis. He just didn't trust his market at that time, and my market was expanding more. When we were comparing notes, when we were talking after one of the sessions with GoBundance, we were just comparing notes, and we're like, wait a second, maybe we should start scaling in your area. To answer your question, Anna, I just I took the time to go out there, Memphis, several times, and it just started my own network, right? Got the relationships, got the contractors on my side, the guys that I can trust, and just ran with it. So really, I just bootstrapped it for a number of years until I got a team that trusted me and I can trust them.
I love that because that's what my husband and I do. Like, I know some investors, they invest in one state and they never set foot in that state again. But we've tried to make an effort to, even if it's once, twice, because when they actually see you're a real person and you're not just some person on the East Coast or the West Coast, in the middle of the country seems to have this like, these coast people. But when you actually get to sit in front of them, it's much easier to make that connection. And so investing may require you to actually go to your out-of-state market and do a little bootstrapping, like you said. It's not all hands off.
I think it's smart to understand your market,
Mhm.
right? Just don't take people's word for it, right? You got to really do your own reconnaissance work out there because people will take advantage of you, unfortunately,
Yeah.
right? So if you never show up there, it's more of a reason for them to do that.
Yes, exactly. We've had that experience. And I mean, in like any area, it can be different street to street. Like when you actually go and walk the properties and walk the areas, you realize, wow, this street 1 block over is so much nicer. I want to focus there versus 2 blocks this way is not. And it's hard to get that kind of vision from someone else.
Absolutely.
And James, you mentioned that, you use the BRRRR method to help scale, right? And then you mentioned mobile park homes, which is, we've had that topic yet on our show. And you and I spoke a little bit about it, of why you got into that, but you might share with the audience, what that looks like and why you decided to go that route.
So we wanted to go the route of owning multifamily. And we did. We bought our first multifamily building in Midtown in Memphis. Great location, 14 units. But we soon found out, there's a lot of CapEx expenses, and that hurts our NOI naturally. Just being in our network, we've just asking around, and really, Chris brought it to my attention, my partner, and said, hey, James, why don't we look at mobile home parks? And part of the reason why, it's very similar to multifamily. Multifamily, you own a bunch of units in a building. Mobile home park, you own a piece of dirt with a bunch of mobile homes in it. But here's the big twist. Once you take that mobile home from a park-owned home, meaning you own it, to a tenant-owned home, your NOI goes that much higher because there's no cap expenses. You're literally owning dirt, right? And all the responsibility falls on the mobile home owner at that point, right? The taxes, CapEx, water, sewer expense, things of that nature. And it's 100% depreciated in your taxes. For example, we just bought one last month in Ainsworth, Iowa. And how many units? We walked in there. It just was crazy, you guys, but this happens as well because it's not as savvy of an industry as people think it is, especially if you're buying my mom and pops. There was 20, I think they advertised it as currently 18 pads rented. There was 21 available units, right? Meaning pads out there. We went there, we found that there was a half acre available to add at least another 8 to 10 units in there.
Wow.
Plus the existing units we can put, or pads, we can put 3 more. So we came out of there with close to 30 pads that we're going to probably start doing that next year after we stabilize this. They weren't charging for utilities. So we took that utility charge, passed it on to the tenants, and there goes your NOI skyrocketing. We kept the rents the same, but down the road, when they're familiar with us, when we have some goodwill, we're going to start increasing rents as well, because it's a second and tertiary market, so there's not a lot of competition. So we're able to do that with that demographic. It's cash flowing from day one, and it's increasing every month.
I'll start with one question. So I know the mobile home parks are commercial? Is that like, how are you financing this? Are you going directly to the seller and working that out? Or how does the financing on something like this work?
Yeah, you just go traditional commercial financing out there. I've got relationships with different banks and regional banks and smaller banks in the area. Generally, I try to get financing from a local bank in the area so they understand what the asset is. Through the years, I've just developed a network in the banking industry. And now we just finance it ourselves. We just utilize our own money. So yeah, gotcha. It's pretty straightforward.
How do you find the mobile home park deals, and like what kind of price point to entry are we talking about here?
There's so many different sizes, Anna, with mobile home parks, depending how much you want to scale. I want to look at it more like multifamily, right? Do I want to buy an 8-unit building? Do I want a 10-unit building? Do I want to buy a 50-unit building? They're all out there. You can go to Crexy right now and look at parks. I bought some things in Crexy before, but really the agent relationships that you have are probably the best because they'll give you stuff that's coming out of the area that's not in the market yet. It's similar to single family homes or any other asset, but that's really where you start. And it's definitely out there. You can look on LoopNet, Crexy, anything like that.
Okay. I was just curious, like if I had a mobile park, do I just be like, I'm going to sell it? I'm like, who do I call? I guess an agent.
Yeah, same. It would be a commercial agent.
That's good to know. So what's the average, or if someone wanted to start in that business, what would you consider like an average? And I know it probably depends on where it's located, but like cost of entry into that type of market, into that like asset class.
Yeah. So a decent park, I would say you can buy, I would say look around about $1 million.
Okay.
Right. And look between 40, probably 40 to not more than 55 in this marketplace per mobile home, right? And when I say that 40 to 55,000 per home, multiply that by, the amount of homes, that's kind of where you should be looking at. But anything over 60, it's definitely out there now. We don't touch right now at this marketplace.
Okay.
So one reason why I wanted James to come on is because we were talking about our journey when we were in Greece, and I was telling him how I'm working on single family homes and BRRRRs and fix and flips, and it sounded very similar to how James started. And what I liked about what I got out of what he what he was talking to me about is, Nico, you might need to think a little bit bigger. And why I wanted them to come on was to talk about these mobile home parks and things like that, because one bigger deal, yes, it sounds scary, $1 million and 50 or 30 different mobile home parks, but one deal could kind of change your life rather than doing it one way. So what do you say to the people that are starting out, like Anna and I, who, we're building our own portfolios, but we have people like you, and other people have told me this as well about, you've met DK and he's on the journey of doing something similar, and he wants to buy, bigger portfolios or, mobile home parks. That one deal can really change your life. What do you say to people like us or that are in that builder phase?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would say really, first understand your numbers, which sounds like you guys do. Then make those relationships in the specific markets that you guys are looking into. In the same time, increase your network of investors. Investors where you want to be, not just investors on the same playing field, but investors 15, 20, 30 years ahead of you who've accomplished what you want to accomplish, right? And have them part of your network, because really it's just like having a crystal ball, right? And having the questions and answers that you want from somebody who's already experienced it. I kind of give the analogies like, are you going to get any health and fitness support from a guy that's overweight? No, you're probably going to get health and fitness support or training from someone who's the person that you want to be, right? Not only the looks, but also the background, right? So really, when you network with people, make sure that they have already achieved what you want to achieve and they're just not talking, right? There's a lot of people out there that talk, but not actually doing the work and actually achieving their portfolio. So there's big discrepancy in that. And then really the last thing in terms of scale is necessary, right? Even Omni, like he buys multiple single family homes, multiple fourplexes, multiple quads. The name of the game is scaling. That's the only way that you will, at least I found, to create real wealth is the scaling in terms of units or pads or however you want to look at it. The larger is the better.
And not be scared of the numbers that they get a little bit bigger, but the conversations are still the same, right? And you underwrite it. And as long as the numbers make sense in the market, then go for it, is what I'm getting out of it, right?
Yeah. Go for it. Go for it though, with really an understanding of what the pitfalls are and what what you can capitalize on. Maybe you bring in an experienced investor and you do all the legwork, you throw some money in, and if it makes sense to him or her, then like, okay, then you can be helped with the financing of it as well. And also the PFS, right? The personal financial statement.
Mhm.
I know investors out there that use guys just for the PFS so they can get a nice loan from the bank. You have to give up some money to do that too for the investor to give them equity. But somebody's PFS who's a multimillionaire is certainly going to help being part of the GP.
Of course. I know we are running close on time, but I wanted to touch about the community. You talked about that plenty of times, your partnerships and, who you surround yourself with and your community with the GoBundance and masterminds. How has that really shaped, who you are and built you to where you are today?
Gosh, I mean, right now, I think community is everything for me right now. Right. So in my current community, we have certain pillars within the community that we all obey by going into the community. That is really, is really our North Star. Right. So authentic relationships, as well as scaling our horizontal income, as well as bucket list adventures. So I try to, and that's kind of part of the wins in life, right? Like what we did a couple weeks ago, Nico, that was my bucket list adventure for the year, right? But in the same time, I'm surrounding myself with a network of like-minded people. So it's just not taking that vacation, so to speak. It was like a working, fun vacation that, you came out with a lot of pearls. Also giving back is a big pillar for us. Um, and then what was the last one? I think that's about it. It's like family relationships, bucket list adventures, extreme accountability. Yeah, that's the last one. Extreme accountability is another one. It's back to what I was saying earlier. Just don't go out and just say things because that's going to make you look bad. Say it because you're going to do it. Say it because you're committed to it. If you're not committed to it, I would suggest just don't say it because it's just going to make you bad and everybody else involved. And that's what the community allows us to do, is just think twice before you say things because you're going to be accountable for that. So it just made really, since I've joined it, not only has my income skyrocketed, that's just a side note. It's really, I became a better man.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. So we're going to ask you a few final quick questions. And usually what we like to ask is what are some hobbies, but I'm curious because, I also love to travel and it sounds like you've been to a ton of beautiful places. What's your top 3 favorite places that you've been and that you plan on going back in the future?
Wow. Gosh.
Yeah, put you on
I
the spot.
don't tend to go back to places because I'm thinking like, wow, I just want to experience it at that time. But the places probably I would go back to because it was just so beautiful was, number one would be Angkor Wat, Cambodia. It was just, if no one's been to Angkor Wat, if any of your listeners have not been there, definitely make your time to go there. It's just these ancient ruins that's been there for centuries. It's similar to like the Greek like the pyramids in Gaza, or looking at their Acropolis. It's like you're thinking of yourself, like, how do these people at that time with no engineering expertise or what have you, getting these massive structures built? And then you're looking at it, and the Cambodian people are like tiny people. We're not talking Norwegian, we're talking Cambodians, right? They're little people, right? And you're sitting there like, wow, it was a sense of awe, really. Definitely, I would say, Mykonos was also a top for me as well, just the sheer beauty of it and just the people, obviously, Nico, that made it a special time. And then I would say my trip down to Chile. I did a trip down to Chile, which was a yoga retreat. I went there by myself, and it was just such a beautiful place. It was a retreat that was like in the cliffs of northern Chile. And this guy, he was an oil titan for Chile, and he was actually a representative for the Chilean government in Japan. So when he came back, he made his whole compound into like a Japanese little structures, and it would look amazing. So that was also a beautiful, beautiful time there. On New Year's Day, we ended up doing 180, I think, sun salutations. So if anybody is into yoga, you can imagine how hard that was. But we did this on a wall, right? While sun was setting. It was just an amazing time.
Love it. Love it. Got to add those three to my bucket list as well. I've been to one. Actually, I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been to Mykonos twice. So, but
So maybe
James,
other islands.
maybe there's so many islands in Greece. It's like I want to go there every year. What is some advice? You've been through the ups and downs of real estate and in life in general. But what is some advice that you would give your younger self based off what you know today?
Yeah, really, the advice that just pops in my head right now, Nika, when you said that, is really don't trust everybody. Even though well-meaning people want to help you and support you, you got to do your homework. You've got to look at your numbers. You have to understand what the surroundings are, what type of room you're in. You can trust but verify, right? I'm very open. As you know, I'm an open person. But when it comes to money, when it comes to life, verify, right? From your own due diligence. And if you don't do your due diligence, then shame on you. That's up to you.
And it's great advice. Great advice for sure. So James, what are you reading now? What is I know you're a big reader. So what's your book that you would recommend to our audience?
So there's 4 books that I'm reading right now. But right now, if you look in my bedroom, I got the book sitting there. So one is Marcus Aurelius Meditations. Second is an AI driven leader. Talks about everything AI wise. It's great. And the person spoke to us in one of our meetings with Go Abundance. And then the other book I'm reading is the 5 Forms of Wealth, which I turned you on, I believe, during the trip.
Yep. The 5 types of wealth.
Yeah, there you go. 5 types of wealth.
Halfway through.
So he'll bloom. It's such a great book for people in the come up or people who are there. It just gives you a better perspective of like, okay, where's my North Star? What am I focusing on? Are these the right things I'm not focusing on? And then I would say, I would say those are really the types of books I'm reading right now.
I love that recommendation. I'm halfway through it and enjoying it very much. So I appreciate the recommendation.
Sure.
James, this has been a ton of fun. I've learned a ton. We'll have to have you come back on later and talk more about the mobile home parts because I'm fascinated about that asset type. But is there any last piece of advice that you would tell anybody maybe that's in the beginning stages of real estate or just trying to get that 0 to 1? What would you say to somebody about that?
You know what I would say with that, and I've heard this from likely another podcast. Yeah, I've heard this guest, and what I would say is this: pretend you're writing a book. What is that book of your life going to look like? Is it a romance novel? Is it a how-to? Is it an inspirational book? Or is it a horror movie? Mm-hmm. I think our lives are like books, right? You right now, you guys, especially you guys and some of your audience have the time. You're working on a blank canvas right now. What is your book of your life going to look like in 5, 10, 15 years? Are you going to write a bestseller or are you going to write a book that no one's going to pick up? So think about that. How are you going to write your book? Is it going to be remembered forever? Are you going to pass it down to your kids? Is your mom going to be proud of it? Or is she going to be like, oh my gosh, my son or daughter wrote this book. I don't want anyone to know that I'm part of the family. That resonated with me when I heard it. And I kind of look at my life like that. Like I've always, my mom came from the Philippines. number of years ago, and she had a good life, her and my dad, right? But they came here for a reason, to give me a better life. Am I going to honor her name by just living it day by day, just a normal person? Or am I going to honor her name to live it, the best life that I can possibly live, right? In that regard, I just don't want to be, put it this way, Nico, I never want to be just a normal person. I just don't. I want to do great things. I want to be with amazing people. I want to see what the world has to offer. And I'm not saying just having a rudimentary life is a bad thing. It's just a choice.
Yep.
So the choice is, am I going to write a bestseller, or am I going to write just a normal book?
What a beautiful perspective. I love that. I love that, James. So where can people connect with you, James? Are you on any social platforms, or because I've learned a ton, and I'm sure anybody that listens is going to be like, where can I talk to James?
Yeah, I mean, I'm bad with social media. I'm not on Instagram. My LinkedIn profile probably needs to be
Updated.
But I'm only on Facebook, you guys. Really, I'm old school like that. For me, I like to connect like this, one-on-one, live. I do a lot of masterminds, as you know, Nico. But yeah, primarily on Facebook.
Awesome. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of the Agent to Investor podcast. Please like, share, subscribe if you found any value, and then DM Anna or I if you have any topics that you want us to cover. You can reach out to me at Nico Garcia and Garcia Official on all social platforms. And you can reach out to Anna at
I'm Anna Bialik _realtor on Instagram, and Anna Bialik everywhere else. And I just sent James a friend request on Facebook. I've already stalked him and found him.
There we go. We'll stay connected forever, James. Thank you again, and tune into the next episode.
Thank you.